Hey, episode 162 of This Life in Tech, or if you prefer, quarantine episode number 1. I'm Jason.
In the middle of the epicenter, the bad guy.
What? Go ahead, TK.
I'm
I couldn't help myself. I was going to say, if you were in the middle of like Wisconsin, would it still be the epicenter?
It's wherever I am.
Yeah, exactly.
it's the Daniel centric theory of the world, not the.
It's not the theory.
I thought of you last night, Dan, because we introduced our daughter to the Phantom Menace.
Okay.
And she really enjoys Jar Jar Binks.
That's why George Lucas did it. I mean, it's the same reason why he did the Ewoks. I mean, you've got to get them hooked. I mean, that's how you get kids. They like all that silly stuff.
How did I miss out on all that?
What's that, TK?
How did I miss out on all that?
I don't know that you did.
You know, when you've been alive as long as you, TK, that's, you know, like what else could amuse you out there?
Still not seen an episode of Star Trek. Or not Star Trek, Star Wars. Not seen a movie.
You know, when you've lived the life that you've lived, TK, and all of those wars, I mean, from the Revolutionary War all the way through Desert Storm.
It's Civil War, not the Revolutionary War.
Oh,
not that old.
But you've seen Lord of the Rings.
No.
Oh, Jesus. Now it's questionable.
I've never seen an episode of Seinfeld either.
Well,
okay.
You're not missing anything from that.
Yeah,
I think so.
But all this pot, like MASH was huge to me. Like I was a huge MASH person.
Clearly.
All that stuff, right? But I think I turned it on when it first came on, and whatever the little guy is, he was annoying to me, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to watch this, and I never turned it back on. But got through like 10 minutes of it. I was like, nope, don't like him. I'm out.
Well,
Jason called the line at Lord of the Rings.
Well, I mean, dude, there's only one trilogy, and it's the Lord of the Rings.
It's the original trilogy, basically.
Yeah, I mean,
All I remember is they had long titles, and if you watched the awards show when they were back winning awards, it was like Lord of the Rings and then 4 other paragraphs to describe the second movie.
yeah. In fact, I'll show you guys a little bit of history. Where did I put that?
Uh-oh.
Keep talking. Hold on.
TK lived this history. Oh, I can tell you, my folks have been working about 16 hours a day for all those companies that were not prepared. Which, thankfully, I was only partially prepared. Haven't been there for that long. The auditors came in from the examiners, and they were like, "Wow, you all have gotten a lot of stuff done in a year." And I had to correct them. I said, "I've only been here 8 months."
Of course, man.
If it's another 4 months, I'd have gotten even more done. But for all those people that are working from home, good on you. It's going to be difficult. Like for the financial services folks, it's difficult to keep money flowing through the system when you don't really have people that are there. I mean, it's those people at the banks, they still have to stay open, even they're opening up tellers only. People still want cash. It's crazy how many people want cash in situations like this.
So here's your piece of history. Talking about Lord of the Rings, let's not forget that the great J.R.R. Tolkien was a linguist, and he wrote those stories so that he could invent languages. And this is his primer for Elvish, Sindarin. So this is like your class. Look at your faces.
I thought there was something after that.
And of which Jason is fluent in.
I have no point of reference for any of this, so I'm just going to let you guys go.
Well, you remember, like in elementary school, you would get like a grammar book, right, for English. This is that, but for Elvish.
Okay, and who's Elvish?
The language that the elves.
He was a singer in like the 50s.
That's what I was driving at, Dan. Good. I'm glad you picked up on that.
Forrest Gump taught him how to move his hips.
Yeah, I got you. That's exactly where I was going. Perfect.
Oh boy.
And the wheels are off the cart immediately.
Yeah, man.
I gotta say, TK, you ain't nothing but a hound dog.
He almost
Nice.
got him to spit his coffee out. Oh, so this is what quarantine does to people. No, Dan's always like this.
I think you have two groups of people. You have people that are always out, in public working and stuff like that. And so this is a big deal. It's a big transition. I think it's a huge transition for a company like Zoom or Citrix or something like that, and really how robust is your system? And then you have folks like me that work from home. Right. So this is largely like, whatever, this is business as usual for me. With the exception of the gym closed down, and stuff like that. But on a daily basis, getting that routine, I think that's going to be the hardest thing for people is, home workers in general, is how do you establish a professional routine so that you do have some measure of efficiency while you're working and you're not wasting half your day doing stupid crap.
It's the number one way to stave off cabin fever and depression is to establish a routine and stick to it. And that's why we're all of our students now have been told to leave if they came back. And we had 1,500 students on campus still. And they just got told at the end of the week, you got to go by this date. We've been told that we can, but we don't have to. But I suspect that's coming soon. And so, we've been getting together. What's that?
It probably will. I mean, the thing that I'm most concerned with, so one of my classmates is the chief medical officer at the Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit. So he, of course, gives out a lot of information. But the outside of that, the people that I'm most worried about are those that have to work in the grocery stores. I mean, they're mainly kids, and there are reports that, of course, now everyone was thinking this is just the killer of the boomer generation, so to speak. But it's not. It's now killing people who are perfectly healthy, and it's pretty bad for what all this stuff's doing. And those people that even survive, they're saying you could lose 20% of your lung capacity for life.
I think if you look at especially young adults, go down and look what you're seeing out of South Florida, right, for spring break. There's two things that. One, those kids are like, yeah, if I get it, I get it. One kid's like, I planned this for 3 months. I deserve it. I've been going. I'm like, okay, stop. Right? You're just not you don't, where are your parents in this, first off? And what discussion are we having? But there's a bigger one. It's how in God's name, when everybody at the show did this, didn't the state, the city, even at the city level go, no, we're shutting all this down. Right. Yeah. It wasn't that hard. Right. Yeah. And for now, what's going to happen today at the end of this week? You're going to put all of those people on airplanes and push them out all across the world, all across the country. That's, there's when people aren't thinking. I went to the grocery store yesterday and they've got tape on the floor now where you stop, where you do everything. And, you're watching the folks that are working the counters changing out, gloves regularly. It's just people getting into a routine. I think the thing that, and I read this the other day, that's really, disconcerting is, one lady, she works the cash register at a Whole Foods. And she was saying that every lunchtime she goes and sits in her car and cries because people are just rude to her, right? Because the shelves aren't fully stocked. It's like, wait a second, this lady's not hoarding stuff. She's trying to help you, right? And it's, that mentality of I got to get everything off the shelves as quickly as I can, because we don't have a food problem. We don't have a toilet paper problem. We have a supply chain problem because there's big spike in stupidity.
No, that's exactly it. If people bought their normal spending patterns, because there's not going to be a shortage of food. No. It's stick with your normal pattern. I remember, and I still do it today. Growing up, my dad got paid every other week. My mom went grocery shopping every other week, and we bought 2 weeks worth of groceries.
Right.
That's exactly what I do when I go to the grocery store. Yeah. I buy my groceries for 2 weeks.
Because I eat a lot of fresh fish and stuff like that. I tend to, with proteins in particular, I don't overload on them. Just because I don't eat a bunch of red meat anymore or anything like that. And when I do, it'll be very specific but it's. It's like yesterday I saw there was a video on it's, and basically people are shaming people now for hoarding, right? And social media really fuels all that in this concept of, let's say literally, like at a hotel where you put your luggage, the big carts that you can put all your luggage in, you put 20 suitcases on. She had one of those full of toilet paper, just loading the back of the truck, basically telling everybody to F off because she's got hers, right?
Right.
And it's like, I do think Costco is doing something. A lot of people now are like going, okay, I don't need to hoard. I've just bought, 2 lifetimes worth of toilet paper. And Costco is now refusing to take that back.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, good luck. Have at it.
Yeah.
Keep it.
Yeah, I wouldn't take it back either. I mean, it's silly with what the people are doing out there for this. I mean, if you're really worried, then go buy 48 pack of protein drinks, because that can last you for one meal, 3 meals a day for a couple weeks. So
yeah. Well, I think one of the problems we have globally, but I'll speak in America because I don't live everywhere else on the planet, is we're an obese nation.
Yeah.
And you challenge people to change their habit, on a normal day. When people say, I want to change the way I look, the way I feel, whatever causes somebody to get off their behind and make a systemic change to any piece of their life. And I'm not just talking about their physical appearance, but any piece of their life, to challenge them to make a change. Try to make them do that in a trying time like now. Right. And that's effectively what I think people are getting, what people get panicked about is what's that? All of a sudden, am I going to have to change the way I eat? Am I going to, and people find comfort in food, right? I mean, that's, we're not kidding each other. There's a certain, that's that concept of eating it's that, there's what they call umami. Like, what's that fifth element that you can't taste, but you just feel like it's intrinsic in you. And people have a relationship with food, right? The toilet paper is just crazy because, everybody heard virus and panic. Now, I'll say this is I don't think that in the public space, news media, whatever, they fed off the panic and videotaping people, cleaning the shelves out and everything. And nobody stopped en masse and said, hey, here's what this virus actually does. Right? Because what are you trying to do? I'm also trying to alter your buying pattern and alter your behavior.
Right.
Whether right now, this is my view of the media, is no matter what anybody comes out that provides a calming effect or that starts to explain this in a way that slows down panic and tries to give people a level set expectation of what's going to happen, they get shouted down by the doomsayers because that sells.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Really, where the overbuying and panic buying takes hold is right now. What have you heard of the media about when this trend is going to start going the other way? We haven't. No. Right now, for example, the gym that I go to is closed till the 31st
of
March. Right? Do you think it's going to open miraculously on April 1?
No,
probably not. Right?
Because most things I'm hearing right now say we're not gonna hit the peak in the United States based on how things are happening until mid-August.
I don't. You're not going to keep the country quarantined that long. It's not going to happen.
No.
Right?
Well, I mean, that's because people aren't.
Right. But what I'm saying is because we're, as you try to say, one of the reasons you could really knock it down quickly in China, if you believe what they're saying, which people do because they're going back to China now because there's no new cases, is because of the regime that they live under. They have the ability to clamp down on society in a way that very few other places on earth do. Right. And so, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying it's effective, right, to get that.
Well,
right?
yeah. I mean, don't forget they actually bolted people into their apartments.
But that's what I'm saying. It's like nobody thought twice about that.
Mm-mm.
Right? Right? And nobody, it's like the silly argument that we can't say that it's the Wuhan flu. Well, that's where it germinated. We still call the Spanish flu the Spanish flu, and that was in 1917. All right? And Dan, I was there.
I know. You remind me all the time.
But that's, we're not even, right now, not only are we not.
Were you in Spain in 1917, or
No, I was on the Western Front. We're not even having an honest discussion about the origin of where this came from, right? And that's the bigger problem. If we're not doing that, we're not saying here's the problem, here's where it emanated from, right? And I think when you look back at SARS or anything else, H1N1 and stuff like that, there was very transparent discussion on television in the public space about what it is, how you're affected, and everything like that, and go carry on in a fashion. But what it didn't do to any of these was tell people they had to alter their lifestyle drastically.
Right.
How many Americans have ever had to effectively change their lifestyle against their will?
No, it doesn't happen in generations.
Only you, TK, back,
Right, exactly, yeah. Back before electricity, right?
Yeah. No, it hasn't happened in generations, man.
But that's what I'm saying. Is like we've not asked people to, and you're not like, in my mind, you're not just doing this for yourself, right? And that's hard for kids to understand, right? You may not be infected, right? You may not be around anybody infected, but I guarantee you, what we're going to hear in the next couple of weeks is people are getting SARS from people that were down in Fort Lauderdale, right? Or Julie, the twins wanted to go to Panama City, and she's like, "No, you've lost your mind," right? Well, all our friends are going, right? And peer pressure is a beautiful thing, right? Especially when you're young, right?
This is the perfect example of the turn of phrase my mom always used to say, and I'm sure yours did too. Well, if all your friends jumped off a cliff, would you?
I have done that actually before. All my friends jumped off, and I did. So I'm like, but I get the sentiment,
But you all had parachutes when you did that.
Well, sometimes yes. I'll tell you, that exact statement got said to my daughter, and my daughter's like, "Would I jump off if they jumped off?" No. I'm the leader. I'd be jumping off, and they have to follow me, right?
That's right.
But no. Exactly, right? You're not. People just, especially like in big areas where people are in close proximity, like Manhattan, like downtown Chicago. I think one of the things that's going unnoticed right now is that the president has both the USNS hospital ships, the Mercy and the Comfort, pre-positioning. I think one of them is going to end up being off the coast of New York City and adding another hospital and caregivers, and the other one will be somewhere on the West Coast, depending on where they're needed. And I think what you're going to see is all the professionals in the reserves and National Guard, they'll be getting, and it's like, hey, but that's why you participate in those programs, right? To be part of that, in case of national emergency or internal emergency, break glass. And I think we're there with medical professionals.
We are. I mean, the medical, so my classmate, they're already, like, they can't get the types of respirator masks and gloves and stuff like that. Right. So, thankfully, because all of the big three are basically shut down, they're starting to pump out, the stuff that they're not using to get to the hospitals. And we very well may need to do like what we did back in World War II. Maybe we need to be going to 3M and say, look, this is what you're producing for the next several months, and just cranking out. Not that they're not going to get paid for it, but still.
If I remember right, correct me if I'm wrong, but the federal government has the ability to step in and essentially force manufacturing to convert over, don't they?
Yeah, that's last time we used it was World War II effectively.
Yeah,
but World War II is different because businesses were actively seeking something to do as part of a patriotic effort. Right now, I think that you almost can't go on Twitter because if on one hand everything's going to be fine, on the other hand the world's imploding, and then who's to blame for it on on any turn of any given second is different, right? And I think the confusion that creates helps to give people, but businesses are going to want to survive, right? I mean, that's just not like, we can argue, you look at some of the plans on who's going to get the money and how, all that stuff. But I think if you,
as of right now, it's only small businesses. It's companies under 500 employees are currently taken care of.
Right. And that's even self-employed, right? There's a mechanism in that law for the self-employed. So,
yeah, you get to basically, claim this up out of Social Security. The thing that's worrisome right now is the amount of companies that are larger than 500 employees. They're starting to lay people off because they're currently not protected. So, in a state of crisis like this, these companies that are laying people off, knowing that there's another bill coming, they're basically trying to. I feel those companies are quasi unpatriotic because they know they're going to get taken care of at some point, and instead of them doing the right thing by their employees, they're just laying them off now. And I think that's appalling, especially when we know there's another bill coming to protect employers that employ more than 500 people.
But here's the thing, that's what they've been conditioned to over the past 30, 40 years, because every time there's a problem, they go running to Congress and go get bailed out, right? Boeing is actually, if you saw Nikki Haley resign from the board of Boeing, because while I think they've done an incredible job of being transparent about the mistakes they made with the 737 MAX, right? And their share, Dan, I think their stock price has been cut in half, maybe even more over the last year. You know what I mean? And so they've paid a heavy financial penalty for that. And I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm just saying that's the results of them being transparent and knowing kind of the road that they're going to have to walk to get back to being trusted, right? But
there's no Alan Mulally.
No, yeah, no. It's funny. I was just, I love that guy. Yeah. Him and Fred Smith. Those are my two business heroes. But now you're looking at companies that, they're like, hey, where do I turn to when I'm in trouble? I go back to the federal government and get more money. Hey, make it a loan.
Right. Well, right? It needs to be. It needs to be a loan. I mean, the government has already made, cutting the interest rates. Now, what people don't understand, and for those that are watching, just because the Federal Reserve has cut interest rates, the issue now is about the supply chain of being able to get things to you. The reason why financial institutions have not dropped their rates as much is because they can't handle the volume. So they're using this in a way in which they can handle the volume, get it out there. For those states that are already in a state of emergency and non-essential services are basically told to stay home, you can't close a refinance or brand new mortgages because what's not essential are the deed companies title companies are considered essential, but the appraisers are not. And so you can't get an appraiser out to a home in order to be able to figure those things out.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, it's one of the problems we have here in North Carolina with income tax filing. So the federal government delayed filing and payment until July, right?
Yep.
And some states have followed suit. North Carolina right now can't because they can't figure out how to bring the people back that have been quarantined to actually vote on changing the law for filing state taxes.
Yeah, but can't the governor just, to me that sounds like an executive order.
It's going to have to be. That's what it's going to turn into.
Get them all in a Google Hangout. You can do up to 250 people. Like, this isn't hard, folks. Dude. Every time I hear something like that, it makes me go mental because we put up a faux roadblock to getting stuff done. That's just idiot elected officials going, sorry, I can't do anything.
Right. It's a complete ignorance of the fact that we are firmly in the 21st century.
Right.
And so this is a good segue too, because these are the little vulnerabilities that are starting to show up in the way systems are integrated together. Right.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll take this down to the open source thing. And so I've been having this conversation with my colleagues about teaching and welcome to my world. Do you think this bothers me? Dude, I'm back to where I've been for the last 8 years. I'm kind of upset that I'm back to where I was, but I know how to do it.
You're regressing.
Well, I know, man. Don't get me started. Don't get me started. But dude, we have the technology.
Right.
I mean, and these are all cloud platforms. Don't worry about that. They'll scale. What you got to worry about is your endpoint, your ISP connection.
Oh
That's
yeah,
what you should be concerned about.
broadband sucks when you start saturating because it's all shared bandwidth.
That's
It's
right.
hilarious. So we've
Wow.
been doing my MBA stuff over Zoom.
Yeah.
So so one of my classmates basically, dared me to do something, and of course I'm I'm not about to do it. So
I've never been there with you.
yeah. So they said because I wound up putting up as my profile picture as when I dressed as Halloween as Voldemort. So I put that on there, and the teacher's like talks. So when you talk, your picture's the one that goes to the top, and all these people are like dying laughing, and the professor has no idea what's going on because he doesn't know how to use any of this technology. It's like he teaches finance, and that's it. Now we've got some of the professors that they are like when they did it, it looked like they were on the set of like CNN or something like that. They knew what they were doing, and it was fabulous.
There's a technology professor from the University of Michigan. I'll get I don't have his name thing, and I took an online class years ago, and it was like the efficacy of technology or something like that. And the guy's super engaging. That's why I took the class. I had watched something he had done, and this goes back 2011, 2012, and even back then he was on it. And I think that he's younger. He wasn't really young. He's a middle-aged guy, but he was so in tune with the technology of communications even back then. And I think that, not just this, but when we look at businesses, one of the number one things I think that holds businesses back in the 21st century right now is CEOs and senior leaders that can't consume or use technology. And that's where you get that parent-child schism of frustration with the workforce, because we're trying to get people to move at the speed of light and make decisions, and the technology forces a leader to be more efficient in their decision making.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the old way of we got to have a meeting, we got to do this, we got to be in person, and all these other things allows people to think at the speed of smell, and that's not how you can succeed and make those gross decisions, right? The big things that matter. And I think that's, I do think Jora's got digital learning, right? And the school that she goes to they're on it. One of her English teachers, just so you not have to, I think she has 2 hats she wears during class. One is for listening, one is for writing, so that you can't be confused about what you're supposed to be doing, right? And these are high school sophomores, right? But the kids still exact their way to have fun, right? And I think in most classes at her school, the teachers are pretty loose about them interacting with each other in class, as long as it's respectful, right? And they joke on each other. And I think it's a great skill to learn when you're young, right? Is you can joke people, but there's a limit to how you do it. But
I don't believe those limits.
No, I know you don't, Dan. I know. Oh, don't I know? But now, like, they exact their revenge with the teachers. Like, one of the teachers they just push him off line and sit there and goof until their teacher shows back up. But it got so bad that they had to bring the vice principal in, and the thing was like, all right, let's see you guys push me off now. First thing, boom, gets pushed right off. But
right. Yeah, what do you do it?
It doesn't say who pushes you off, right? It's a nameless, faceless crime, right? And those are, to me, and I think especially for like high school kids that are, the school that my daughter goes to is heavily invested in Google Classroom, right? And it's learning how to use Google Meet, all that stuff, all of the other tools that come along with it. And that's the future of learning. Right, like right now, I can't remember the name of the school or the program, but there's an expedited MBA that Google employees they're the first en masse group of people that took this new meeting. It's completely online. You can do it on your phone, and they're starting to, all the reading and everything. They're doing it when they commute back and forth to work, and they're creating this. And then it's that online community where they get on a Hangout and they can have 100 people on the Hangout. Why? Because the Hangouts will do 250. State legislature in North Carolina, if you're listening, shout out to the governor. What's that governor's name? He's got like a used car salesman name.
I don't know, but this is the perfect time to unite the Carolinas.
Isn't it? Isn't it?
When you say that, you've got to get in your Confederate outfit and talk like Foghorn Leghorn when you do that. Or have your
Jason's platform is not pro-slavery. He's not looking to go back to that.
Or
Yeah,
have a seersucker suit on the front porch of your plantation.
Yeah, I got to clear something up real quick just for the recording. I do not, nor have I ever owned a Confederate uniform.
No, I'm saying if you're going to talk like, all right, unite the Carolinas, that's how I think of like old Gone with the Wind movie back in the day.
Hold on, let me look on Amazon and see if they have one. I'll send one to your house. I got Prime. Oh, but
I'm sure, and please, America, do not at me. I'm sure the governor of Virginia has got his Confederate uniform right next to his Klan hood and his blackface makeup.
It's probably all the same.
What's that?
It's one and the same for him, probably.
Oh no, yeah, no, but he's still allowed to be the governor. We realize that like the Klan's not a social club, right?
You know what I read this morning? I was reading something and the Klan came up and it showed a picture of these dudes protesting. And
what is coming up in your Google News feed that the Klan comes up?
This was not Google News. And these people were having the conversation that we've had that, no, you want these people to go out and protest so you can see who they are. And, right? Okay. And then there's some statistics down at the bottom, which was interesting to me. Apparently, at least registered, so take this for what it's worth, but registered, there's only like 6 to 10,000 Klan members in the U.S. now, where it used to be like 6 million.
Right. But again, like hiding the abhorrent behavior allows it to persist.
Yeah.
Eisenhower, when he went to the first concentration camp near the end of World War II, when he looked around, the first thing he said is, "Go get me every camera and movie camera we can find, and I want detailed records of this kept, because in 60 or 70 years, some damn fool's going to try to say this never happened."
Yeah.
And now there's a lot of those fools.
And now there's a lot of Holocaust deniers, right? And I tell everybody, you travel the world and you have the chance to go to Europe and go to a concentration camp and stand there. It's life altering. And Jared did it when he went to Europe. And that was one of the things we were looking on the trip that he was going to go between junior and senior year of college to Europe. And one of the things was they were going to Auschwitz. Right. And that's, you get the full breadth of what humans can do to other humans. Right?
Yeah.
That's a scary thing. And I think allowing whatever group that we find to be abhorrent and completely disagree with, let them talk, right? Because when you hear it in full voice, it makes it easier to go, okay, we don't need any more of that around, and you can self-police it, right? You don't people. I'm not saying to ignore it, but if you say we're not going to engage in that behavior and we're not going to allow it, if you take the spotlight off it, it's going to, you take the sunlight away from flowers, what happens? Don't water it, right? And that's where you go from, probably at the height in probably, in the probably 30s, 40s, and then certainly in parts of the country, even into the 50s. I mean, you look at senior senator from West Virginia, Robert Byrd. He was the grand poobah or whatever is they call it of the Klan in West Virginia. Like we knew it wasn't a social club back then.
Right.
Right. And, and later on he got the message and he started, whether in his heart or not, at least in public, he started to change the rhetoric of hate that came along with that. Right. And that's what perpetuates all this garbage behavior we have.
Well, and I think that's what's important to understand about debate as a platform. It's easy to fall into the trap that the purpose of debate is to change somebody's mind. And I really don't think that's really the purpose of it. The purpose of debate is to show the audience how good or bad a given idea is. Mm-hmm. And it's not about, me convincing you that you're right or wrong or whatever, right? It's about everybody watching being able to hear two people engage in a dialogue and figure out for themselves what makes sense.
And
there's just some things that blatantly don't make sense.
Right.
Like putting on sheets.
Well, I think it's anything, whether it's Antifa or whatever. Like you look at the modern version of Antifa, is if you have to cover your head and your identity to espouse what you want to espouse, you might want to go home, take that hood off, look in the mirror, and think about what you're saying.
Yeah, you might be the bad guys.
Right.
You might.
Yeah, exactly. At some point, beating up people and hitting them with whatever you're going to hit them with because you disagree with their point of view, that's never been cool.
Right.
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 And I don't, it's baffling to me, but I agree. Like, stifling debate in any of its forms, right? Even if it's heated debate or anything like that, you're giving the audience the opportunity not to change their mind, but to open them up to a potential point of view they've never considered.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And that's, to kind of bring it into what we talk about every week, when you look at it from a leadership perspective and, you go into a room as a leader, the hardest thing to do is to walk in. I mean, how many meetings have you gone to? Like, were you, unless it's this bang emergency, but you go to a weekly meeting where you're discussing marketing or, the next product meeting or whatever, you have a general feel for what the agenda is going to be because it's already been put out. And the leader, the hardest thing to do is walk in and not put your thoughts out first, right? And that concept of being the last one to speak as a leader, because once you do that, people automatically are going to they're going to mute their voice, not necessarily of dissent, but of things that are different. And I think in that is where you really find the next great idea. You can, I, as a leader, think X, Y, and Z. Well, somebody brings D to the table. Well, I don't need all of D, but D's got some great nuggets in it. Let's pull this in.
Yeah,
Being that leader and letting everybody else kind of, vent their spleen about what they think is important. I think that's huge to getting new ideas across the table. And whether your Bezos has done it, and I've talked to people that have worked for Amazon in development, and they're like, yeah, he comes in. Obviously, everybody knows, Steve Jobs, and it's legendary. But Jack Welch, when he was running GE, right, he would sit in the back of the room at these. They have General Electric used to have. They have General Electric University. You could go into the finance management program, engineering management, and all these things, and they were effectively great graduate degrees, and those employees were sought after to run other companies after that General Electric experience, especially when Jack was there. And my dad lived through all that when he was there. But he would sit in the back of these rooms when managers from around the globe would get together to discuss a problem. Mm-hmm. And he would, at the end of it, the lights would come on, and half the time you didn't know if he was in the back of the room or not. But he would get up and walk out. Right? He wasn't there to comment. He was there to learn. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that when you start talking about debate, whether it's political or anything, is show up with everybody's going to have their opinion, their biases, and everything else, but also show up to learn. Right. And you can't, it's the old adage, the shortest book in the world is everything I learned while talking.
Yeah. Right. What are you looking up, Dan?
I'm getting some stuff for you for your open. When you finally start talking about your open source.
Well, we got a good transition, so let's do it.
All right, so
because what we're going to talk about is the perception of more or less vulnerabilities in open versus proprietary software.
Yeah. So what is the overall overarching thing for Ubuntu nowadays? Because
what do you mean by overarching?
The organization that would basically oversee Ubuntu. Is it Ubuntu?
Microsoft owns Canonical. Owns Canonical, and Canonical is the company that manages and runs Ubuntu.
All right.
Right. So Canonical produces Ubuntu, and Microsoft owns
there we go.
Canonical.
Okay, so I'm just getting people prepared. So you got Server 2016 for Windows, and Ubuntu's basically their equivalent version. 1,644 vulnerabilities for Server 2016, and Ubuntu, and it's basically the last version. I think I did for 1804.
Yeah,
is 1,319.
So roughly 300 less.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so let's start this conversation this way. This is something I've often wondered about, and I'm really interested in your guys' thoughts. So this is a question. why do we as a community tend to perceive the state of security of a product based on the number of reported vulnerabilities? Thus, because my observation is this, that the more vulnerabilities reported, the less secure that software must be. To me, that seems to be the prominent mindset. What do you guys think?
So no, part of that gets into the criticality level and of that. I mean, so when I was doing my dissertation, a lot of people believe that Apple is this far superior operating system when it comes to security when compared to Android. Yet there are more critical vulnerabilities in iOS than what there were in Android. Now, this has been several years since I looked at it. I think the last time I looked at it was in 2015. But at that time, there are more critical vulnerabilities which were exploitable in Apple iOS than there was in Android. But people have this perception that Apple was more secure.
Right.
Now, what Apple does a good job of, because this is the next part you have to look at, is how quickly does an organization close that threat window. So when the vulnerability is reported, and this is what kind of made us really great at Silent Circle, is that when it happened, I said 72 hours, we're getting this shit closed. That's what we're going to do. Apple responds pretty quickly, and it's typically, within a quarter that they have closed down a public. Now, if it's a highly publicly well known, they roll it out in a couple weeks. Whereas when you look at Android, Google will get it out to the public. And in this case, if it's your Pixel, you'll get it pretty quickly. The issue is that because it is not centralized, you have many different Android vendors. Samsung is the worst at getting out their patch.
Right.
So it's not only how many vulnerabilities reported, the criticality level, then how does the vendor respond? How quickly are they to get it back to a known baseline?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Microsoft, with Microsoft Patch Tuesday, you're getting updates every month. So as long as you're staying up to date, which unfortunately most companies do not, they aren't, at least Microsoft's getting patches to you. The issue that you have with the open source community is, well, which one are you using? And, what's the overall developer community like? Ubuntu has got, I don't know how many developers, but it is an insane amount of code that has been created by people in basically their spare time. The great thing about the open source community is that they're very quick to react, but what they don't do is, because they don't really have this, is the regression testing. So when you start looking at regression testing, is like, who's doing it, under what conditions? Microsoft, Microsoft, Apple, Google, they've got all this stuff lined up. They know how things are supposed to work, and even still, they make mistakes, but they get it back. Those fixes back to you. In the open source community, sometimes it's not as quick because they don't know all the which ways, and there's not necessarily something that is streamlined. It's volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I'll tell you, even go down to the app level. Like, look at the difference in Signal and how quickly they're turning things around now, and the diligence that they have now that they've gotten a big influx of cash from one of the founders of WhatsApp. And more importantly, they're getting some of his business advice, right? And you're, not only just feature functionality, but they came out with 3 updates last week. All of them were bug fixes and things. Added some little new feature that really, it's, hey, we're trying to get parity with iMessage and WhatsApp and everything like that. But the other thing I've noticed is how quickly my contact list, folks are adding themselves to Signal, right, and moving away from other things. Been that even down at the app level. I agree with you, Dan. Samsung is the absolute worst, and one of the, Samsung in particular. And I've been to some of the Samsung Developer Conference and things like that over the past few years. They are desperate when you listen to them talk. That's my word for how they're behaving. They're desperate to get away from being known as a handset manufacturer. They want to get into the content delivery business, right? And so in doing that, they put their own skin over everything, and it creates chaos. And I got it firsthand when my daughter had to go volunteer at an assisted living facility with a bunch of older folks. And they asked if she could come in and help people with their technology. Well, if it's Apple, she's awesome at it, right? She can wear out an iOS device with the best of them, but she has very little experience with Android. So I said, okay, I'll go along, and then I'll help with the Android. What I imagine.
It's almost like child abuse, TK.
What's that?
It's almost like child abuse.
Yeah, that most of these older folks had Android phones because you can get better deals on them. You know, they're the giveaway phones. You know, Samsung A20 and things like that. They're the giveaway phones when you go get a service. One of the biggest problems in using Samsung in particular is you've got a Samsung photo bucket, you have a Google photo bucket, right? And so you have duality of services all throughout that, right? And most of the time, this is what I heard from a lot of these elderly folks is, well, my grandkids set it up. They didn't take any time. They just set it up and said, here you go, grandma, use it. There was no education, right? And we had a blast. I had so much fun with these folks just answering their questions. Right. And, you know, what is the provenance of, for example, T-Mobile or AT&T, and what is on, you have to learn how to use the phone. Right.
Right.
And that's really, you know, that disparate nature, because ladies like, I lost all my photos. Well, no, you didn't. You had been looking in the right bucket and you hit another photo icon button. And there was nothing there. Right. And nobody ever taught you that there was two there, and you can't mute it, which is why obviously like using a Pixel, getting that native Google experience. Even to a certain extent, like the OnePlus, they've gone to Oxygen OS, but they still give you probably the closest to native experience that you can have because there's not duality of services on there. You know, and that's, you know, I think that's where Apple wins a lot of time is people like, I just want to use this thing. I don't want to be confused about what I'm doing. And I think you're right. But even now, like Google are starting to clamp down on the ability to sideload apps.
As they should, because that's, well,
right.
This is the perception in terms of the security aspect, where if you don't have a proper MDM and you're managing your enterprise devices, if you allow a third-party app store for Android as an enterprise, I think you are negligent in your duty.
Negligent is the nicest word we can say for that.
Yeah, right. I mean, that is what, you know, I don't have to root my Android device to get the workflow that I need. And because of what I've, you know, been developing over the many years and using mobile devices, I can't get that with Apple. It's not a part of it. I change devices too often. I go to a Mac. I mean, again, you know, if I had everything that I wanted, I would be running Linux as my personal desktop, and I'll get there because I'm getting ready to have VDI everywhere. So my laptop will be Linux. Like I won't have to worry about it. I'll get what I want. Right. And that's only because Apple has not yet given me a MacBook that has touchscreen so I can write my notes. The iPad Pro just is not there from an enterprise device, which is why, you know, now likely I use my Chromebook. I love my Chromebook. I use this thing for everything.
I'm on a Pixelbook right now.
Yeah. And that's a big reason why the credit union that I work for, the reason why we have as many people right now that are able to do remote access is because I started, you know, testing Chromebooks and just remote desktop back in October. So when this stuff hit, I told everyone, go buy a Chromebook and we'll do remote desktop until I get VDI. So, because it works. You know what you can't do with remote desktop? Anything from an iPad. So, well, even though iOS recently, you know, they released something that said that has mouse support for their iPad Pro with a particular keyboard. I haven't tried it to see how well it works, but if I had to guess, it's probably not great. You're going to have different issues. Funny thing, I don't know if you all have noticed this with your Chromebook, but because I never really paid attention, the right shift key is caps lock. So if you hit your right shift key and you're typing, you hit it, it turns on caps lock because there's no like caps lock button on the keyboard.
You start typing angry at that point?
Yeah, I'm like, what the hell happened? Because I've been using it a lot more and more. I mean, it's only when you're doing it through remote desktop. That's the
yeah, no, I've never noticed that.
Yeah, it's only when you put a desktop to a Windows system. Anyway, but you know, when you look at the open source aspect, there are so many different things, and you have to, I use a lot of open source products, even inside the credit union, because now I pay for the support. OpenVAS for vulnerability scanning, OpenNAC, which is the network access control, because it works. I don't need all these fancy bells and whistles that a Cisco or Juniper or something like that has. I just need certain functionality to develop a skill set, and it's great. I think the biggest issue when it comes to open source versus a Microsoft or something like that is just what level of support are you really getting, and do you have the people on staff to be able to get them there? The only certification that I'm aware of for Linux is CompTIA with Linux Plus. I can't think of something off the top of my head that lets you know you have someone at least understands the basic concepts to pass a test. Microsoft,
it's just Red Hat.
I was going to say, that's my thing. What is Red Hat's got internal certificates and stuff, like that you can go and it's like they've got a whole learning thing. And I'm pretty sure Canonical's doing this because their model, I think that I can't remember the name of the founder of Canonical, but even back, like I started using Ubuntu using 704. I think it was probably 704 is where I kind of jumped into that. And even back then, the idea of them having a server application or like that, I always viewed that as like, okay, this is a guy that's looked at Red Hat and said, how am I going to monetize this groundswell?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And there was a report out years ago that when you look at the open source native, especially of Ubuntu, and I think it might have been one of the founders of Microsoft that came out and said that in order to produce, the reason that Microsoft, for example, charged what people now believe to be an extortionate amount of money for the operating system is back in the day was because of the amount of man hours it took to develop it.
Yeah.
Right? And it was like the figure that they threw out back at the time that it would probably cost like $4 billion, $6 billion to have developed Ubuntu without the open source community.
Absolutely, easily.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing. Like where I'm not a huge fan overall of certifications in general, because I think some of them are better than others. But what I do with it is at least if they can pass a test, then I know they have some level of training. And I ask them like, okay, did you self-study or did you go somewhere? And tell me about the type of training that you did. How hands-on was it? The more hands-on the training is, then the more likely I am to know, okay, I at least know, you've been trained properly. And now if you make mistakes, then, then now we really have a performance, issue. But, like I said, I wasn't really too aware of in the Linux community about the certifications in terms of the training. But that Microsoft's done a good job with this. Cisco's done a good job. CompTIA's got some good stuff out there. I absolutely despise everything coming out of ISE squared, the CISSP. Who gives a shit about the Bell LaPlata, security model? And whatever.
No, I'm saying they're the ones that give a shit. That's it.
We can write them off as a sponsor.
Yeah. Those are the things that like someone says, oh, I got my CISSP. Great. It's useless to me. It doesn't give anyone a good sense of what the overall risk is for an organization because they haven't, anyway, I want people to be trained on the products they have to manage prior to them having to manage it. That was the great thing that the Department of Defense put out in their Directive 8570, essentially said that when you take on a position, you've got 90 days in order to, I think it was 90 days, could be wrong, would have to ask Pete. But 90 days to get certified, or you can no longer work on that equipment. I mean,
that's reasonable.
Yeah,
that's you're not saying, hey, because what you do is you allow for a manager to say this person's really smart. They don't have the direct technical knowledge, but they have a robust technical knowledge. Let's get them qualified on this.
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
I look at a guy like Stoney, right? That people ignore some of the stuff that just because he's how he says it sometimes, but that was a guy that was managing some super complex terrestrial networks, and one day said, I think this cloud thing's going to catch on, right? And has gone out and it started out as a hobby, going to all those AWS events, and it's easy in the Beltway to do that. There's one every day, right?
Yeah.
Going to those AWS events, then getting certified, then getting more certified, then going, hey, now it's not just AWS, it's Azure, and now I think he's doing some dabbling in some Google, right? And getting whatever certificates he needs, not just because he wants the certificate, but he understands that having the certificate and then sitting in an interview or talking to somebody and demonstrating some competency gives people a level of comfort that you want to hire him, whether it's to contract work or to be an employee. That's the key to this thing. PMP, for example, like a project management professional, it's de facto now in a lot of places. Why? Because all it does is then give everybody a common language when you're talking about managing a project. It doesn't mean somebody that went to a PMP test mill, right, which a lot of them are, is just, here, we're going to teach you how to take the test. And it's that pump it up. It's like standardized testing in public education system, right?
Yeah.
That we're not teaching you how to be a project management professional. We're teaching you how to take this test, so then you go get a job, right? And I agree with you, Dan. If somebody's going to say, hey, you have to have a PMP, I'm going to go, did you go get a graduate certificate? Like most of them, that's the easy way to do it. Yeah, like I know, like right now, there's a program at Syracuse where veterans can go, and it's an online class, like, much videotaped, interactive experience, but it's 8 or 10 weeks long, and you're taught the ins and outs of how to do this, right? And a lot of it, especially, and I'll use the military as an example, you have all those skills already at your disposal. Now you're going to say, okay, here's how the military talks about it and does it, and now how do we do it, right? And how do we talk about it in terms of using the PMP? What's happened now in the last few years is the government has said, hey, we want PMPs.
Especially if you're managing a project, I think it's over 5 million. They have to be,
right?
If I remember correctly. And that's the thing where people that are you'll see on LinkedIn all the time, people that are against any type of formalized education. Hey, hire whoever. And the thing that I say to them, which is fine, certifications provide some type of formalization. Are you going to let a doctor that's not board certified work on you?
Right.
Are you going to let a CPA audit your books? You're trying to go. You want to be that next unicorn. Guess what? You're not going IPO if you don't have a firm come in that's got a bunch of CPAs. Guess what those CPAs have to have? A 4-year degree,
a license,
a test,
a license, right?
Right. It's the same thing with technology. And I don't remember, and it's funny because at the time I didn't really believe it, but Dr. Cordani, who Jason and I had as a professor, who, he started to get out there a little bit. But the thing that struck me was he essentially said cybersecurity and information technology in general is not a profession yet. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, as he explained it, it's because there's not enough overall body of knowledge, so to speak, on what it takes to become like a CPA for IT or a teacher, because you're in the public side, you have to get certified to be a teacher. All these things, it's not there yet, and it takes years to do this. Now we're starting there with these certifications, but there is no official standards body like there would be for becoming a board certified, X. And
the formal term is community of practice.
Okay, yeah. So,
well, like you see the same thing. We've had this discussion before too. I think you see this, and it's good models to follow, like with the legal profession or the medical profession, where you have a rigorous certification process and then a requirement to recertify or continue the education in some way.
Yeah,
that in part is what defines community of practice.
Yeah, and we're getting there to an extent, but this gets back to like I said, when it comes back to open source, I was not aware of any other Linux-based certification. And IBM will probably really start pushing because since they bought Red Hat, other than the Linux Plus. And, that's pretty much what I was aware of. And that's going to be a part of, I think, of how we manage vulnerabilities in an open source versus a closed source is the people that are trained in order to understand and how to remediate any of those threats, because they're going to happen no matter what. It doesn't matter because it's not just, so to speak, the Linux operating system. Then it's OpenSSH, OpenSSL, Apache, name your web server. I mean, all those things on top of it. and how it interacts.
Well, and that is a major difference between Linux and all its version, Unix and all its version, and things like Apple and Microsoft. Is Apple and Microsoft are closed ecosystems, whereas by definition, Linux and Unix is not a closed ecosystem.
Yeah,
and that just brings in a different set of problems with necessary solutions. That's all. It's not better or worse.
And
It's just
I
different.
just keep going when people want to talk about this. I go, well, what's the skills level of your team? What are they trained in? Well, that's the right solution then. If you got a bunch of people that are like Cooper, then you know what? I'm going to run a Linux shop.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to run Microsoft.
Especially because he's got Linus Torvalds on speed dial.
Yeah. If I got a bunch of kids right out of college, guess what? They were trained in Microsoft because that's where everything's falling. That's what I'm going to go towards because they've got training. So it just depends on the team. Don't be like Bill Belichick and build your playbook around your team. Don't force your playbook onto the team.
Yeah,
Right.
otherwise you're just going to have to go out and hire people. You're going to have to. You'll have to basically push most of the people aside and say, "I've got to bring a professional somewhere because I am so dedicated to this one position," and that's a management thing in life, right? I want a certain outcome and I want it to be a certain way, and why? Because I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
Right? That's the conundrum with leaders, right? Is what do I ask everybody else to do to keep me comfortable?
Yeah.
If you've got a long list, you're not a leader.
Yeah.
Right. Your job is to make it easy for other people to be successful. And there's all the multitudes of the ways that looks. And technology is a huge part of it, especially when you start talking that most CEOs are between 55 and dead. And, they've picked up, thanks, Dan.
I'm dead.
They've picked up technology casually. Even technology leaders, a lot of them are good business people. They're not great technology people, right? I mean, Dan and I in particular stood in the center of the room while a CEO was on a call talking about technology and answering the questions on the whiteboard in line is they're saying them, right? And not that shouldn't happen because there's a skill set to be a great leader thing, but you also have to say it's bringing in people, bringing in depth. Right. And that's the hard part. That's the hard part where Dan articulates saying, look, I've got X amount of people and you can't fire everybody in one day. Although I tried one day.
You did. Well, it wasn't that you tried. You were directed to do so because of our cash situation.
Right. But, at that point, when you get to who you have and you've got the team, what are the strengths of the team? And that's where you take a guy like Stoney. Like, hey, Stoney, we were going to build terrestrial systems today. He's like, all right, dude, I got that. Why? Because he's got a long and distinguished career doing that.
There's one thing I'm never going to let Stoney build for me, though.
Terrestrial systems?
No.
What?
Anything has to do with that crappy ass corn.
Moonshine. Yeah. But a guy, you talk about the ultimate like multi-purpose tool, right? That guy's the Leatherman of servers, right? If you want a terrestrial system,
I was thinking he's more like Cliff Clavin of systems.
No.
From Cheer.
I mean, you get a guy like that, then you whatever system you want to build, either he has intimate knowledge of it and he's been certified to do it, or he's got a community of people that you can say, hey, we're going to do this, or advise you based on the people that we currently have in the room. I think this is the way we should go. And that's the value in some nature of a guy like folks like Stoney that go out, they get certified as a byproduct of learning, right? They don't get certified and then learn, right? And I think that's the big differentiator, but that's also the testing industry, right? You've got to have, Agile now is the great, how many, like, I love Morgan to death, and Morgan's like an Agile for one of the healthcare for Anthem. They switched from waterfall for their development to Agile, and he's the guru for all of Anthem for all of their software development. That dude is a certificate getting machine, but he does it as a function of I want to learn something else, right? He's a lifelong learner. But if you look at his LinkedIn profile, I don't even know what 90% of those letters are after his name.
I don't remember anymore now.
He's got more than you do.
I don't really have any.
Well, you're about to expand because you got to put CES and
you got to put all that stuff. So for those that want to wonder like how they can get their executive team and boards to buy into certification training, Ask them if they would ever allow someone to work on their nice, expensive car that's not ACE certified.
Right.
Because guess what? Those dealerships, they're not hiring those people that aren't ACE certified. And when I did that at First Source and stood up and said, look, calling off one of the board members, I said, what kind of car do you drive? Of course, they were all BMWs, Mercedes, stuff like that. And I'm like, they're not letting anyone work on your car that's not ACE certified. And then I got my money for training.
Right. A lot of it is, I think that's is any C-level person, there's an education function in what you do, right? Because when you look at a board, especially in tech companies where a lot of the board members are investors and they want a certain financial outcome, what's their risk model, right? Because that's literally, they invest in the company. There's some risk model they have for investment. We have a risk model running the company. You have part of if I'm the CEO of the company, part of my overall risk profile is what my CIO, CISO, and everything are what we've agreed to do. And then between the 2 or 3 of us, depending on how the company's doing, is to go to the board and sell that, right? And I think analogy works great. It's like, I can't remember for what, but there's a commercial where a doctor walks in, he's like, hey, guess who just got his license back?
Yeah.
And me too. Don't worry about it. I'll see you in there. Right. That, I thought that was the best one out of all of those, because when you walk into a doctor's office and you see the certification on the wall, you're like, he must be competent. Right. I think it's a little bit easier now to define competence with the internet and what you can get from feedback, but you have trust and confidence in the system. And that is why the medical profession is so rigorous in, almost seems to be arcane sometimes in that process from day one of college till the time that you're allowed to touch a human and practice medicine on them without training wheels.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm just starting, like, when I get my MBA diploma, which one's going to be higher, the doctorate or the MBA? I'm not sure. It's going to depend on the company, on the wall.
On that note, I'll leave you with this thought. The big takeaway, in case everybody missed it, from Dan's little First Source meeting, asking about the cars, is one of life's deepest, most meaningful mantras. Drive German, kiss French.
Eat Italian.
Well, I remember the one I had to tell you. I said, well, why don't you want to kiss Australian? You're like, what is that? And I explained.
You're like, what the fuck is this guy talking about?
I explained it to him. He was like, all right, but I don't know that Australia makes any cars. So I think we're safe on that. Don't have to worry about driving Australian.
Yeah, man. Drive German, kiss French. That was my dad's advice to me as a young man.
You see what GM did? What kind of like is we started off talking about the economy and what's going on. Do you see what they did?
No.
What they 0% financing.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
up to 84 months.
Mm-hmm.
They want to move product, right? How do you keep your employees working? As you got to move the inventory.
Well, here's what's funny. Except right now, in a lot of these states with the state of emergency, car dealerships aren't open.
I know. Yeah. I wonder if you can still get a car delivered from Carvana or something like that, or drop it off at your house.
I was just gonna say, I bet services like Carvana are gonna kill it, because at some point somebody's gonna want to buy a car, because especially you're sitting around bored. I mean, how many episodes of The Office can you watch in a row on Netflix?
0.
Yeah, well, yeah. You know what I mean?
I think I'm gonna watch The Banker this evening.
TK, this is the perfect opportunity for you to get into Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. Yep.
No. I have an acquaintance / buddy that's he's a super nice guy, but he's one of the most annoying people on the planet if you're with him for more than half an hour. And, no, it's not. No. And he's been, now that he's got some free time, he keeps texting me and wanting that thing. And I was just like, dude, just no, I can't. No means no. I don't have time to have my ears raped. And, but there's a lot of that. I actually, aside from the fact that, I have a full-time job and that occupies a considerable amount of my time, I've been reading a lot more and doing a lot more writing.
Good.
You just, I think if, especially with regards to speaking and being out in public, is, hey, now's the time when you can't be out doing it. And thing is, how am I going to frame the message, and how prepared am I going to be to hit the ground running once we're allowed to go mingle amongst the citizenry?
Yeah, there's an enormous amount of, dare I call it, simulation you can do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just going through your head, oh, if I say this, then I might say that. Or if somebody asks this question, I might say something like this. I love doing that personally.
And it's not just that. It's like it's developing content, right? And changing, saying, what have I done in the past that's worked really well? And what do I want to work really well that I haven't gotten a good voice to doing it? And especially when you start talking about branding, is what do I do with the brand? And I've come up and I'm going to release it. But again, it's getting set up to do things, release content in 1 minute bursts or less.
Yeah.
But how to be concise and release content in 1 minute bursts and get it up on social so that people can remember it, right? I did a podcast with a friend of mine, and it got tremendous. People have called and said, hey, we want you to come speak and stuff like that. But it was long. You had to listen to it. It was more like, hey, this is in full what you get. I tell people when I send it to them, I go, consume it as you will, but it's long. But I think in order to be impactful, you have to give people things that they can consume in 30-second phrase, almost like an Instagram, one of those, here's a paragraph at max. And you can look at it 2 or 3 times and go, hey, I have the gist, and I move on. And then you become kind of a destination on social media. I think imagining that for me has been a lot of what I'm doing when I'm not, basically doing my day job.
Yeah. That's excellent, man.
All right. So I got a stock tip for all those people out there. BJ's
Jesus.
Restaurants.
BJ?
They are normally trading in the 40s, but that because of what's going on right now, they are under $9.
What's Darden Group got going on right now?
I don't know. They're not one of my stock tips to research this past week.
Okay. Darden, you look. They own Olive Garden. Other chain restaurants. We got quite a few restaurants here, like mom and pop restaurants, that are just killing it. With Jason locked up on the screen with possibly.
He's still in shock. He's like, I need to buy BJ's Restaurants right now.
But no, that face right there is possibly the best. The best.
See if I can get snipping tool up quick enough. And damn it, got it.
He's going to shut us off here soon.
That's all right.
Nope, he shut himself off. But no, like you look at like all these mom and pop restaurants are killing it, and I think the ABC, the liquor board, is really helping out because they're allowing them to sell beer and wine to go.
Oh, well, so that's the one thing that's so for those people that are looking to do takeout food and stuff like that because they want to support these people, the advice that I have been given from my doctor friends is don't do it. Like they're because you don't know all the people they've been coming in touch with. Don't. It's unfortunate, but don't get the takeout food.
Are you still talking about BJ's?
No, we're just talking about like mom and pop restaurants that are trying to support themselves with takeout and everything like that.
Oh, we had a little power flip. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
We got a screen grab, the best confused face screen lock ever.
I got the great. I snipped it, so of you basically looking like you're in awe.
That's a rare event.
Or
That's often. That's often. Oh man.
All right,
I don't know. It's a perfect clear day. I don't know why we had a little power blip. Oh well. Yeah. Well, I'm back just so we could end it. How about that?
there you
Awesome.
All right, guys. Be safe. Be well. We'll do this again next week, everybody.
go. Yes, sir.
All right, my friends.
All right,
Take care.
everybody. Have
We
a
can
good
actually
day.
start doing it in the middle of the week. We got nothing else to do. So we get 5 episodes a week right now.
We could. Monday's the only day I have to be in the office because we're rotating.
Ah, there you go. Well,
So
good luck with that.
Yeah,
Keep the bank safe. Keep the money flowing.
got to do it.
Yeah. If this goes long enough, I'd be entertained. I would entertain doing another Wednesday show.
Yeah.
Half week.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, my friends.
Everybody have a great
All right,
week.
everybody. Talk to you later. Bye bye.